Thank you so much, Professor Obi. And I guess after this fantastic presentation, I am ready to be your student and learn more. This is absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much again. Now we'll open the forum for quick questions. Q&A. Yeah.
Thank you for such an eloquent presentation, Dr. Obi. You had mentioned our largest trade partner being Canada, and in terms with certain global issues such as the recent trade agreement between Canada and China, the current Swiss gold referendum that's going to occur on November 30th, and even the Russian-China trade agreement, the 30-year agreement for gas, $400 billion agreement. In terms of the stress on the dollar, and a lot of those bilateral agreements seem to bypass the US dollar as the world reserve currency, how do you put that in the context of your presentation in the book?
Well, let me tell you this basic fact, and it's pretty quick. Regardless, the US dollar still is the preeminent currency. And in fact, the reason it has continued to get stronger, in spite of the fact that our trade gap is worse than it's ever been, is actually because of that. When China sells its oil to, when Russia sells its petroleum to China, the price of that petroleum is in dollars, even though there may be a micro agreement for China to pay in yuan. The yuan is actually pegged to the dollar, and it's called a dirty float. So it's about 6.12 yuan to the dollar. It's not going to change much from there. So if Russia sells petroleum to China and says, oh, we'll accept your yuan, if the yuan is pegged to the dollar, it's something as saying, you pay us in dollars anyways. So the dollar is the preeminent currency because it is the denominator of virtually all international assets. That's not the fear factor, the world abandoning the dollar. It's not really a fear factor. The fear factor here is how we can internally shore up the financial strength of the United States. Even Iran sells its oil in dollars anyways. Venezuela, that doesn't like America, sells its oil in dollars. So because if you go to the New York Stock Exchange, it's in dollars. You know, we do not make cocoa, produce cocoa in America. Cocoa sells in dollars. And gold, we don't really have much of any gold out of the West Coast, but it's in dollars. Right now it's about $1,200 and something dollars, actually less than $1,200, about $1,100 and something dollars per ounce. So that's not the fear factor. It's okay. Trade agreements are wonderful. Obama actually signed a memorandum of understanding in trillions of dollars last week with China. Thank you. You're welcome.
Good evening, everyone.
By the way, that's Odion Clunis, the gentleman mentioned in chapter 4 of my book.
Not a question. I just wanted to personally thank you for your contributions into my life, and just to let you know that it has been very flourishing, and the fruit of your labor is not in vain, and I love you very much. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. I must confess to you that, no, it wasn't planned. It definitely wasn't planned. Yes?
Well, I guess this is just going to be a big feel-good session. I'm a former student and very grateful as well. I have two teenage kids right now that aren't buying into the pursuit of math and science. They want to pursue something sexy like social media and create an app. Anything I can say to them?
You know, and as I've said in the book, and I've said on a TV program, which is appended to my website is myname.com, patob.com. Watch that thing. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. You know, there's nothing wrong with anybody choosing anything. But let your expectations be managed. You can't get blood from a turnip. So if you want to do social work or media relations or whatever it is, that's fine. But do you know how much you can expect to earn in the career? Have you managed your expenses in keeping with the income expectations so that you wouldn't be a complainer every day? So money in and of itself is not the point. It's how you manage it consistent with the income that comes from the career that you have so willingly chosen for yourself. That, to me, is the discussion that should be had between you and your daughter, your children. Yes, please.
Dr. Obi, I'd like to thank you for your presentation. I think when you asked the question about what's our largest trading partner, when we grew up, it was most favored nation status. Mm-hmm. And so it was Japan, I believe, at the time. Now it's China. Can you comment as to what that is and how that helps us, or what's the whole relationship there?
In terms of China?
Just most favored nation. I mean, when someone is designated that, are they getting some incentive?
You know, that most favored nation thing will crumble once trade agreements are signed. You know, once most favored trading nation is simply a way of singling out specific countries that you're going to give favorable trade terms to. That's what that is. The same favorable trade terms that would become universal if, in fact, you have, for example, the current ASEAN APEC group of countries, which is the Asia-Pacific group of nations, the countries that are straddling the Pacific Ocean. So if they remove the trade barriers between these countries, then everybody becomes a most favored trading nation, so to speak. But in the absence of that, that term becomes one that's used in a micro rifle manner. You're targeting specific countries to give them trade privileges with you. Something like that's all that is. The terms may differ from one country to another country. So,
one other, can I ask, would you say then that manufacturing as it was known is forever gone here? And
no, actually it's coming back, because you got to remember, manufacturing, we lost manufacturing on account of one factor and one factor alone, and that's what? Labor cost. That's the only reason. Labor cost. One of the consequences of globalization is that an equilibrium is being gradually attained over time. As labor costs begin to, you've heard recently though, that even though the economy has been growing, even though unemployment is going down, that average income hasn't gone up much. You've heard it, right? Well, why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? So we're not so quick to run up in our incomes. On the other hand, go to China. The first time I went there with Dr. Sale, my key mentor in this university, was in 2006. And we went to some free trade zone cities in China, and we saw the hustle and bustle going on there. Today, not quite so. Their income levels have gone up significantly. Labor cost is rising per second. So eventually, if this global system continues on, there would be a point in equilibrium, just as you would have within a nation among the different states. Yes, please. That's my opinion, at least. Yes, please.
In some of the credits that they gave you tonight, they didn't recognize that you're also the director of the Executive MBA program, of which I'm currently a student. So not to make it a grand love fest, but I would like to know how you would like for people like us who are here and trying to gain more knowledge from you. How do we get that out to, how do we send your message out? What can we do? Where do we start, basically?
Well, you know, thank you very much for that. That's a very good question that you ask, and trust me, what I enjoy doing, which is this, being a teacher, is one that gives me the opportunity to let people get a picture of America that you may not quite get if you haven't been away. I think it was Mark Twain that wrote, and I'm going to paraphrase, that travel and adventure are an enemy to someone who is narrow-minded and narrow-focused. And so the things I have seen inform my passion, and the experiences and privileges and opportunities in this country push that passion to the level where the first time when I wrote my first book, a textbook in the Lithuanian language, was funded by the U.S. Department of State, as well as a few other faculty from here who were beneficiaries of that. It was one that encourages me to know that there is yet no better place than the United States. I can say that without fear of contradiction. And I'm telling you that I'm a minority in this country, and until I pass away, I think my ethnic community will still be minorities. I'm an African in terms of my origin. Things have not been smooth sailing all my life, as I'm sure it hasn't been for a lot of people. But that story, and all those stories pale in comparison to the potential of this great nation that has served as a beacon of hope to millions around the world. You take the average person from Afghanistan, as much as they may hate America, from Pakistan, and put them in a plane and say, which country might you like to go to? I know you might want to make a joke out of that, but I'm sure they will probably, majority of them would probably say, to the United States, to America. I know, I have seen that. I've seen that in far-flung places. So I haven't really directly answered your question, but I do have my website, patobi.com, does have some of my postings, some web pictures. My contributions, just casual contribution, video contribution on risk management for banks, was actually the reason that I was invited by the West African country of Ghana, that's how I know about Ghana, to train their bankers on current bank regulations and things of that nature. So these are my ways of trying to reach out. And I do that under the auspices of Purdue University, Calumet, and I do that as an American, first and foremost. And so you have a good story to tell. We went to Dubai recently, and you saw what's going on there. And you see how it is that in such a short time, they have used the American model to create an instant wealth for the almost 1 million people that live in that very tiny emirate. These are stories that we can tell and share, where we work, places we go to, and stuff like that. I think for America to be ready, for the next level, we have to be mindful of where others are, definitely.
We'll have a couple more quick questions before we wind up.
Hello, Professor.
Yes.
How's it going? So I was just wondering about this. It's kind of like a trick question, but so we were doing well, right? At the beginning, we used to work pretty hard, right? I'm not from this country, but originally, but I came to this country, and Professor Pat actually took me under his wing, and I'm very thankful for that. So thank you. Sorry. So why do you think things change? I mean, what caused the world to change? Oh, not the world, but the U.S. to just change in a slow or pace. You know what I mean?
Yes, I think I do. Thanks, Anthony. When I met Anthony, he was 17, actually. That's when he came here, and I met his parents several years ago. But anyhow, just to be sure, this country, we still have the highest productivity in the world, by the way, compared to any other nation. The beauty of this nation is that Americans are not afraid to work hard. I document the facts in the book. This is the most hardworking nation in terms of output per man hour. That's how productivity is measured. We don't like vacations. In this country, average vacation time is 2 weeks. And then you want to go back to work quickly. And then you want to go on vacation, they say, oh, by the way, if you work a couple more days, we'll pay you time and a half. Yeah, I'm in on it. Give me time and a half. We like to work. We like to make money. We like to live good. These are wonderful things. We have to be careful, though, about debt. That's the aspect of your question that is dealt with in this book. Debt. Debt is a wound that can take away from your, it's like a virus that can take away from your strength and health. That's what one has to be mindful of. And that's what happened in 2007 and 2008. Outside of debt and the fact that sometimes we misjudge how the world feels about us, we're doing very well. It's for that reason that this is still the country of choice. I was in Sweden, in Stockholm, Sweden, less than a year ago, minding my business. I wanted to have me a little glass of red wine, in some little lounge. And I walked in there and I sat, ordered me a nice little wine. The gentleman, the bartender, says, you're an American? I said, yes. Oh, I've never been to America before. Where are you from? I say Chicago. You have to say Chicago because that's the big city around here. He says, wow, that's really nice. Anyhow, long story short, I had about 3 glasses of wine free of charge. I might add, though, that I might have stumbled a little bit. Yeah.
So we have just a couple more questions, one here and another there, and then we'll wind up for today, please.
Hi, Dr. Al. I just want to thank you for this nice presentation. I met Dr. over 14 years ago in Amsterdam, and I'm proud to be a friend of his. And at the end, I came to Purdue and I studied and I graduated from here. He never been my professor. People said, you know, he's a tough professor, and he's a very nice friend, I think. But I have 2 questions actually. Number one, on the personal level, you know, always people say, you know, stay away from debt, as you know, like. You know, it's always bad for the person, but I just want to know, like, the big picture. Like, when people stop borrowing, isn't that something bad for the economy, you know? Isn't that like a sign that, you know, people are less confident? That's part one. Part two is, you know, a business owner, you know, we have a lot of burdens on us when it comes to tax, especially when the big corporations are moving, you know, to, you know, outside from the United States. So I wanted to know your opinion about, since, you know, we have more taxes to pay now, are you with, you know, increasing the minimum wage as a national level or against? And if you are with, what is the substitute for, you know, business owners like us, you know, to start a substitute for something like that? Thank you very much.
All right. Now, take the last part. Raising minimum wage, it is not really an issue that's so big to me. But it's important to me. When I say it's not an issue so big to me, it doesn't mean I'm not in support of it. But I did tell you that well over 60% of the businesses in America that would hire that cook, that steward, the person who bar backs, the retail guy who's out front, these are small businesses. So I'm not really worried about raising minimum wage, but we have to be very careful to make sure that we understand that many of these large companies that we often think of when we say raise minimum wage already are paying above minimum wage anyways. Okay, well, maybe with the exception of Walmart, but even then, it's at least one of the largest employers of labor in America at the end of the day. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is this. If the vast majority of the businesses are businesses such as his, that'll give a job to 1 or 2 individuals, and if he says, well, instead of hiring 3, I'm just going to hire 2, just so as to make sure I meet this higher threshold, then haven't we cut our nose to spite our face? My point is, let those who make policy decisions, let them think through that argument. 1, what proportion of American firms would be so affected? 2, how many, on average, employees do these companies have? Mostly these small companies. And 3, what's the likelihood that they would hire less if they are forced to pay more? These are questions that economists, not me, not people in finance, would need to answer so as to inform the policymakers before they move forward. To whimsically raise minimum wage at a time we're struggling to reduce unemployment, to revitalize this nation, to do it in a whimsical manner, we may wind up at the short end of the stick. I guess it needs to be an informed, very well informed decision in the light of the intensity of global competition. And do I take one more?
Yes, here's the last question.
Please.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ober, for the whole event you've had this evening, and you did quite well, of course, as always. Thanks for having us ask these type of questions at the end. I'd just like to ask, you mentioned taxes and things like that with households versus corporations. Most of the taxes go toward the households versus the corporations overall.
Yes.
Then you mentioned rates and things of that nature. I'd like to know at the end of the day, the most influential factor on the prosperity of the economy if it comes more so, you think, from the manipulation of the fiscal policy of the government and Congress through, there's always talks about the trickle-down effect and how you tax the upper class,
Yes.
things of that nature, or do you think that the driving force, the more of the impact comes from the monetary policy of the Federal Reserve? I know you like Ben Bernanke, Alan Greenspan.
Yes, I do.
I'd just like to know, at the end of the day, who has the most power to drive our economy?
Oh, simple. The Federal Reserve.
That's what I always thought. I thank you for confirming
The
it.
Federal Reserve. So now, here's the meat of his question. The way this economy moves is on account of what the White House and Congress do on the one hand, which is spending money to build up infrastructure, education, healthcare, that kind of thing. That's fiscal. The other is what the Federal Reserve does, which is to inject money into the economy to keep interest rate levels low or to remove money from the economy. Whatever would help to accomplish three goals. One is to keep inflation low. Two is to raise employment. And three is to increase productivity in the economy, growth, to promote economic growth. So those three key goals are what the Fed looks at and says, well, how can we inject more money or probably take money off of the table so as to make sure things go well? I do have to tell you this real quickly, but since 2008, the story of the American economy is one that's made almost solely by the Federal Reserve, because we owe so much that because of the political grandstanding in Congress, outside of the stimulus of $787 billion that was signed into law by President Obama in 2009, there really hasn't been much of any other fiscal spending. In years to come, you will probably be learning that one of the most fiscally conservative governments was in the 8 years of Obama, by the way. But you would also be learning that much of that was an account of this political impasse. So there's actually a silver lining in that. We haven't spent much of anything. What the Fed has been doing is to inject money. It's called quantitative easing. That's nice vocabulary. Tell that to your spouse next time when they want to spend more money. Say, oh, you're doing quantitative easing today at Christmas time in the mall. So that really has been what's been going on. That's what been pushing unemployment rate down, causing our economy to grow by an average 3% per year, giving us a little over 200,000 new jobs net new jobs every month. That's been the reason for this, keeping interest rates low so that companies and individuals can borrow to finance personal consumption and business investments. And yes, it's very important that these things happen. And I know people would question whether pumping more money into the economy is really wise under all but unusual circumstances. It's unwise, because the more money you push into the economy, the more you overheat the economy and create inflation pressures. But where is inflation anywhere? Have you seen inflation lately? I haven't. I've opened all the doors and windows. I can't find inflation. Anyhow, the economy is a little bit more complex than sometimes people tend to simplify it in the news media. But I do want to, from the bottom of my heart, really thank you very much, from the mayor to the chancellor to my wonderful dean, Dr. Jane Muchler, who since she came on board in the College of Business, things have never looked rosier. And I can tell you that without fear of contradiction. I've been here for 25 years, and we haven't had such more effective leadership that is inspiring performance, making you to come to work being happy. I'm usually a happy person, but I'm happier now than ever before. And it's because of the support that the likes of the chancellor, my dean, and definitely my right-hand man here, the mayor of Hammond, and many others, like Dr. Nidhi Parashar, who, as you know, is well-known nationally and internationally. He's a major scientist and contributor to the God particle research that received the Nobel Prize in Physics last year. That's her right here, Dr. Nidhi Parashar. The press came here, and she agreed to be so humble as to MC this occasion for me. And definitely my colleagues, that are here. I'm a fortunate employee of Purdue University, and I think that the joy and success of an occasion, a learning experience such as this, is by your attendance. And I have to tell you, you couldn't have better students than I do. In the Executive MBA program, which I'm privileged to run at this time, the regular MBA program where I teach a couple of graduate courses, and the undergraduate courses in corporate finance and risk management and financial markets, which I currently teach. So to all of you, I salute you. At this point, I will take a seat there, and if you have $10, I'll gladly personalize and autograph a copy of my book to you. We must change the way we live. It's good for everybody. It's definitely good for America. Thank you very much.